Texas Panhandle, 1876. The cold was so mean, it turned breath to frost when Nora Whitfield was tied to an oak tree. Her back split open with the words, "Comanche lover, still bleeding fresh." 4 men stood around her, laughing low like predators, the knife that carved her still warm in one of their hands. She tried to breathe, but every inhale stabbed deeper, and then, without a second glance, they mounted up and rode away, leaving her to die slow in the dark woods. A wolf howled close enough to rattle her bones, closer than any hope she had left. "If this is where my name ends," she thought, "please, let no one find what's left of me." Before we continue, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, leave your city name in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Isaiah Cole found her by the sound the wind made when it passed over something that shouldn't have been there. The pines were quiet, snow just a thin crust on the ground, and then the breeze hit that bare white back and turned sharp, like it had scraped a long bone. His horse blew, snorted, and tossed his head, ears pinned toward the stand of scrub oak off the trail. Isaiah reined in. "Easy, boy," he murmured, but his own voice came out low and tight. There, half hidden behind the tree, was a shape that didn't belong in any decent world. A woman. She was tied to the trunk with rope rubbed dark by blood and dirt, arms wrenched back around the bark. Her dress had been hacked open between her shoulders so the skin showed, raw, swollen, carved. The letters were ugly, jagged, dug in deep enough that blood still seeped from the furrows. Comanche lover. Isaiah stared, his jaw clamped so hard it hurt. For a second, he didn't see this woman at all. He saw other bodies, other scorch marks, other nights. Fire licking at the sky, folks screaming, his own boots slipping in the mud when he ran too late. "Mot Lu Kon," he breathed under his breath, words pressed flat. Damned fools. Not Comanche. Not savages. The men who'd done this. The ones who always needed someone else to bleed for what they feared. Her head hung forward, hair tangled over her cheeks. Isaiah swung down from the saddle, boots crunching on frozen ground. He went quiet like he always did when trouble was close, every move measured. "Ma'am?" he said. His voice came out rough from disuse. "You hear me?" No answer at first. Only the wind and a far-off coyote, yipping like it was laughing at him. He stepped closer, close enough to smell dried blood, whiskey, and something sour that was just plain fear. He reached out, fingers brushing the inside of her wrist. The skin was cold, colder than it had any right to be, but there it was. A pulse. Faint. Stubborn. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Isaiah let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. "Hell," he muttered. He stood there a moment, caught between two lives. The one where he turned around, rode, home minded his own black hide and the little girl waiting on his porch, and the one where he took hold of this mess and let it ruin him proper. In his head, an old voice spoke clear as day. Sheriff Barton Hayes, years back, laughing over a bottle. Black man with a white woman, that's a hanging coal. Don't even need a rope most days. Isaiah could almost feel that rope on his neck now. Dry Creek didn't need much of a reason. He looked at the woman again, at the word on her back. Comanche lover. They'd meant it as a sentence, not a description. No trial, no judge, just letters in flesh, then leave her for the coyotes. His hand tightened on the rope where it dug into her hip. He remembered his wife's hand, Ayana's, brown fingers slipping out of his, smoke choking his lungs, the world burning red around their little cabin. He'd arrived too late that night, too late to pull her from the flames, too late to save the baby in her arms. He'd dug both graves with his own shovel. He was not going to be late again. "Ma'am," he said again, firmer this time. "If you can hear me, you're not dying strapped to a damn tree." She twitched at the sound, just barely. A broken little sound slipped out of her, half-groan, half-word. Don't what?" he asked. But her head lolled, chin bumping her chest. She was gone again, sinking. Isaiah shoved his fear down where he kept the rest of it. Deep, tight, under the ribs. Fear of the law, of white eyes on his skin, of all the ways this could end with him swinging from a branch not far from this one. He drew his knife, old cavalry steel, nicked and worn, and slid it under the rope at her wrists. Her skin was torn raw beneath, purple and swollen. He worked careful, teeth grit. The fibers gave with a dry snap. Her weight slumped forward. For a heartbeat, he almost let her fall. It would have been easier. Let the ground take her. Let the world finish what it started. But his arms moved before the thought could land. He caught her against his chest, feeling how light she was. Too light. As if the world had been cutting bits off her a long time before this tree. "Got you," he said, and heard how strange the words sounded in his own mouth, like they belonged to some other man, another life. Her cheek pressed against his coat. Her lips moved, barely. He heard a word he didn't understand, soft and broken. Maybe a name, maybe a prayer. He sheathed the knife, hooked one arm under her knees, and lifted her clean off the ground. She was all bones and shivers. His back complained. He ignored it. Blue sidestepped when Isaiah came back to him, nostrils flaring at the smell of blood. "Easy," Isaiah murmured. "We're taking on one more soul, that's all." He leaned the woman gently across the saddle, then swung up behind her, bracing her with his arm so she wouldn't slip. Her head lolled back against his shoulder. He could feel every tremor that ran through her. He looked once more at the tree, at the stain where her blood had run down into the bark. This was how Dry Creek did its judging now. No gavel, no Bible, just knives and rope and words carved so deep you couldn't ever wash 'em out. And for a second, just a second, Isaiah saw himself right there in that bark too. Not as the one tied up, but as the one holding the blade. He had done it before. Not this exact thing. Not this exact tree. But he'd carried guns for men who talked like the ones who'd done this. He'd followed orders. He'd told himself it was justice. He turned Blue toward the thin line of moon above the ridge, toward where the dark dipped down to his own land. Willow Bend Ranch wasn't much. Lean fences, tired cattle, a house that creaked in every wind. But it had walls and a fire and a little girl who still laughed sometimes. "Cole," he muttered to himself, almost like it was a curse. "You're a damn fool, too." He nudged Blue into a careful trot, holding the woman steady. Each step jostled her. Each flinch that rippled through her made his gut tighten. As they rode, the forest thinned. Somewhere behind them, a coyote cried again, high and wild, like it was disappointed its meal had been stolen. The sound crawled up Isaiah's spine, but he didn't look back. He knew what waited if he did. A tree, a stain, and the easy road where he walked away and pretended he'd never seen her. Instead, he fixed his eyes on the faint glow he knew was his lantern in the distance burning on the porch for Lila. "Just a little farther," he said quietly, though the only ones to hear were Blue and the woman slumped against him. "You ain't done yet. Not if I got any say in it." For the first time in a long time, he was choosing the harder road on purpose. And as the ranch lights came into view, small and stubborn against the dark, Isaiah Cole knew one thing for certain. Whatever trouble this woman brought to his door, it was already too late to turn her away. Rosa Delgado saw the lantern swinging before she saw the horse. She wiped her hands on her apron, stepped out onto the porch, and froze when Isaiah rode into the yard with a limp body slumped in front of him. "Dios mío," Rosa whispered. "Isaiah, what have you done now?" Isaiah slid off Blue, boots hitting dirt with a thud. "Didn't plan it," he said. His voice was low, breathless, like he'd been arguing with himself the entire ride. But she was tied to a tree, left for dead. Rosa took one look at the raw, carved skin through the torn dress and hissed a sharp breath. "Inside, quickly, before Lila wakes." Too late. The door creaked open, and a small girl with a wool blanket around her shoulders stepped out. Lila rubbed her eyes, curls messy from sleep. "Pa? Why are you home so late? Who—" "Back inside, baby girl," Isaiah said, struggling to keep his voice calm. "Go wait by the stove. Do what Rosa says." Lila's eyes widened at the sight of the bleeding woman. She didn't scream. Lila never screamed, but she shrank back like the night air had suddenly grown teeth. Rosa ushered her inside, murmuring in Spanish, while Isaiah gathered the stranger into his arms again. She was lighter now, or maybe he was just realizing how little of her there was to begin with. The house smelled of cornmeal, wood smoke, and winter air that clung to Lila's blanket. Isaiah laid the woman on the narrow bed he'd built years ago for Ayanna, but never could bring himself to sleep in since. The room felt too small for all the ghosts in it. Rosa came back with a bowl of hot water, rags, and a tin of salve. She glanced at Isaiah. "You know what bringing her here means?" "Yeah." He unbuckled his coat, wiping sweat from his brow. "But I couldn't leave her." Rosa didn't argue. She just knelt by the bed and gently turned the woman onto her side. The stranger jerked awake with a feral cry. "Don't touch me! Don't! Don't!" Her voice cracked into something sharp and broken. She tried to shove Rosa away, arms flailing weakly, eyes wild with confusion and terror. Isaiah caught her wrists, careful but firm. Hey, you're safe. It's all right, ma'am." His deep voice did nothing to soothe her. She thrashed harder, breath hitching. Tears streaked down her dirt-smeared cheeks, but she didn't seem aware of them. Rosa spoke softly in Spanish, her tone a soothing hum, not meant to be understood, just felt. The woman still cried, still trembled, but the fight in her drained like water leaking from a cracked cup. She sagged back against the pillow. Rosa set her jaw. "We need to stitch these cuts, all of them." Isaiah looked at the torn flesh. God, the words dug into her back had gone deep. The kind of cruelty that wasn't meant just to hurt, but to define. "Do it," he said. Rosa threaded a needle, hands steady from years of patching both wounds and shirts. When she pressed the cloth to the sewn, bleeding grooves, the woman let out a thin, agonized whimper. Isaiah swallowed hard. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm real sorry." She didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered shut. He didn't know if she passed out or simply retreated somewhere far inside herself. Rosa stitched. The sound of thread pulling through torn flesh made Isaiah's stomach twist. Every flinch of the woman's body felt like a blow. "You hold her shoulders," Rosa ordered. "Soft, not heavy. She needs to know she can breathe." Isaiah did, hands trembling despite himself. He'd held dying soldiers before. He'd carried his wife's body out of fire. But this was different. This woman was still fighting, clinging to some scrap of life, and every part of him felt the weight of her choosing the harder option. When Rosa finished the third stitch, the woman's eyelids fluttered. She looked at Isaiah for the first time. Not through him, not past him, but at him. Her gaze was raw and suspicious and scared, and Isaiah felt something inside his chest shift painfully. You're not them," she whispered hoarsely. "No," he said, "not them." Her eyes filled again. They carved me, said I should die with the truth on my back." Isaiah remembered the word, remembered the broken edges of each letter. Rage flared behind his ribs, hot and bitter, but he swallowed it before it could scare her. "We're fixin' that," he said quietly. "You hear me? You're not dying tonight." The woman collapsed back into the pillow, breath shaking. Rosa wiped her forehead with a clean cloth. She needs rest and broth when she wakes. Isaiah stood, but his knee buckled before he caught himself on the wall. Rosa shot him a look. "Sit," she said, "or you'll fall on her." Lila peeked around the doorway, clutching her doll. Her voice was small. "Pa, is she gonna die?" Isaiah knelt down and opened his arms. Lila stepped into them, burying her face in his shoulder. He held her with one arm, the other bracing against the floor. "Not if we can help it," he murmured. Lila's small fingers clutched the back of his shirt. "She was hurt real bad." "Yeah," Isaiah said. Some folks do bad things 'cause they're scared, or mean, or both. Are we scared? She asked. He kissed the top of her head. Sometimes. But being scared don't mean we get to act like them. Rosa finished tying the bandage around the woman's torso. She'll sleep now. Isaiah tucked Lila against his chest, still watching the stranger on the bed. There was something in her face, something stubborn, fragile, and unwilling to let the world finish her off. Rosa, he said softly. Yes? What's her name? Rosa shook her head. She didn't tell us. Isaiah exhaled slowly. Then we'll ask when she can stand on her own feet. He stared at the carved letters hidden now under bandage and cloth. Comanche lover. Whoever she'd been before this night, the world had tried to rename her with a knife. But in this house, in Willow Bend Ranch, she'd get a chance to call herself something else, even if the world outside wanted her dead for it. Morning came slow to Willow Bend Ranch, thin light creeping across the floorboards, brushing over the quilt, the table, the boots Isaiah had left by the door. It took its time reaching the narrow bed where the woman lay. Isaiah hadn't slept. He sat in a chair pulled close enough that his knee touched the bed frame, arms folded, eyes fixed on her like the wrong dream might steal her breath. The woman stirred before the sun fully rose. Her lashes twitched. Her brow creased. Her mouth opened like she meant to scream, but all that came out was a soft, cracked gasp. Isaiah leaned forward. You're all right, he said gently. You're indoors. You're safe. Her eyes snapped open, blue-gray, wild, searching. She looked at the ceiling first, confused, then the walls, then her own bandaged torso, and then she found Isaiah. Her breath hitched. She shoved herself up on trembling elbows. Don't touch me. Isaiah lifted both hands in the air. I ain't touching you. Ain't even close. She blinked, breath ragged. The fear in her eyes wasn't just fear. It was memory, crawling under her skin. You're in my home, Isaiah said softly. Name's Isaiah Cole. You ran a fever half the night, but Rosa stitched you up fine. She swallowed hard. Where are they? Who? Her lip trembled. The men, the ones who... They ain't here, Isaiah cut in. Only folks in this house are me, Rosa, and my girl Lila, and none of us got interest in doing you harm. He could see how the words landed, slow, cautious, like she wanted to believe him but didn't know how. The floor creaked. Lila peeked from behind the doorway, half her small body hidden. Her curls were braided messily on one side. She held her rag doll upside down. Isaiah turned. Sweetheart, I told you to wait in the kitchen. Lila didn't move. She stared at the stranger on the bed, wide-eyed and curious and scared all at once. Is she mad at you, Pa? The woman's gaze softened at the sight of the girl. Some walls inside her shifted, just barely. No, Isaiah answered. She's just... shaken off a bad night. Rosa bustled in from the kitchen, apron dusted with flour. "The broth is ready," she said, then paused when she saw the woman awake. "Buenos dias, querida. You drink now. You need strength." The woman flinched as Rosa approached, but didn't jerk away like before. Her breath came shallow, chest rising too fast. Still, she took the bowl Rosa offered, hands shaking so badly she nearly spilled it. "I can hold it for you," Rosa offered. The woman jerked her head. "No, I can do it." Her voice cracked on the last word. Isaiah watched her lift the spoon, grip white-knuckled. She brought it to her lips, managed one slow sip, then another. Her throat bobbed when she swallowed. He tried not to stare, but something warm thudded behind his ribs. She was trying. She wanted to live. That mattered. Lila crept closer, small feet padding softly. "Does it hurt?" The woman hesitated. "Yes," she whispered. "Pa says hurtin' means your body's still fightin'," Lila offered, almost proudly. A weak, bewildered smile ghosted across the woman's mouth, her first since he'd found her. Isaiah cleared his throat, voice rough. "What's your name, ma'am, if you don't mind me asking?" Her fingers tightened around the bowl. Silence stretched, a long, taut thread. Finally, "Nora," she said, barely audible. "Nora Whitfield." Isaiah nodded like he already knew, though he didn't. But the name fit her somehow, soft edges hiding steel. "Well, Miss Nora," he said, "you're safe here. That's a promise." She looked at him sharply, mistrust flickering. "You don't even know me." "True, but you were tied to a damn tree and left to die. That's enough for me to know you ain't the problem in this story." Something in Nora's expression buckled, just a little. Rosa straightened the blanket around her shoulders. "You rest. When you can stand, we change the bandages." Nora's breath stuttered. "No more needles." "No needles," Rosa promised. "Just warm water. No harm." Nora leaned back against the pillow. The room felt too warm suddenly. Sweat glimmered at her hairline. But her body wasn't locked with panic anymore. Exhaustion softened the sharpness in her eyes. "I don't understand," she murmured weakly. "Why help me? Folks don't do that. Not for someone like me." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "Someone like you," he echoed. Nora turned her face away. "They said I deserved it." Her hand drifted unconsciously toward her back. "Said I was filthy." Lila's small voice piped up before Isaiah could speak. "You're not filthy." Nora froze. Isaiah exhaled slowly. "People say cruel things when they're scared of their own shadows. Doesn't make 'em true." Nora blinked, eyes burning. "You don't even know what I did." "Maybe you'll tell us someday," Isaiah said. "Or maybe not. Either way, you're breathing, and I ain't letting anybody stop that." Her throat wobbled. She looked at him like she was waiting for the catch, for the cruelty that always came after kindness. But none came. Rosa took Lila by the hand and guided her to the kitchen. "Come, Nina, let the woman rest." The house quieted. Nora sank into the pillow, breath easing. For the first time in what felt like years, she let her eyes close without fear of waking up dead. Isaiah stood, pulled the chair back to the bedside. "Sleep," he said softly. "We'll be right here." Nora didn't answer, but a single tear slid down her cheek. Silent, slow, clean. Not from pain, but from the faint, bewildering ache of being somewhere she wasn't hunted. Hope, thin, fragile, trembling, had found a crack to slip through. And for the first time since he'd pulled her from that cursed tree, Isaiah let himself believe she might actually live long enough to follow it. By late afternoon, the fever had dipped enough for Nora to sit propped against a pillow. Her breaths no longer rasped like sand in her throat. Her hands still trembled, but she could hold a spoon now, slow, careful, proud in a quiet way. Isaiah watched from the doorway. He wasn't hovering, least he told himself he wasn't. But he lingered like a man waiting for proof she wasn't about to vanish between heartbeats. Rosa stood near the stove, rolling dough with her elbows deep in flour. Lila sat on the floor, braiding her doll's hair, stealing glances at Nora every few seconds. It was the closest to peaceful the ranch had felt in months. Nora looked up. I can help with something," she said, voice soft and unsure. "If you need chores done." Isaiah blinked. "You can barely sit straight." "I can peel potatoes." Her chin lifted slightly, stubbornness flickering beneath the bruises on her jaw. "I don't want to just take. Not after." She trailed off, the words dissolving like salt. Isaiah crossed the room, grabbed the peeler from the shelf, and set it beside her on the table. "Fine. But you sit. I'll get the bucket." Her gaze darted to him. "You trust me with a knife?" He hesitated, not because she wasn't trustworthy, but because he hadn't expected the question. "Knives for potatoes," he said gently. "Not for runnin'. That's trust enough between us for now." Her expression softened into something he couldn't quite name. Gratitude mixed with confusion, dusted with a cautious warmth. She peeled slowly, hands shaking, but each curl of skin falling into the bucket seemed to stitch a little strength back into her. Lila edged closer. "Do you want to braid my doll's hair? I can show you." Nora looked startled, as though kindness from a child hurt worse than any wound. I don't know how," Nora murmured. "That's okay," Lila said, plopping down next to her. "Me neither when Ma was sick, but Rosa showed me." Nora's throat tightened. She blinked fast, then carefully extended a hand, touching the doll's yarn hair with fingertips that treated it like something fragile. "You can show me," she whispered. Lila beamed. Isaiah turned away, for reasons he couldn't quite put into words. Something about seeing Nora soften, seeing his daughter smile again, felt almost too intimate. Rosa wiped her hands and carried a plate to the table, setting it before Nora. "You eat," she said, tone firm but kind. Then tell us a story, something not sad. Nora startled. I don't know anything not sad. Then tell something true, Rosa offered. Truth can be warm too. Nora hesitated, eyes drifting toward the peeling knife, then to the fire. The flames made shadows dance along the walls, softening the room, softening her. She took a breath. There was a boy, she said quietly. A Comanche boy. Isaiah's shoulders stiffened, but he didn't move. Nora continued, voice steadier than she expected. He used to bring me water when I was taken. He wasn't older than I was, barely a man, but he watched over me like someone who believed everything could still be good. Lila leaned forward. What was his name? Nahi. She rolled the name gently, like she hadn't said it out loud in a long time. He taught me words, Nora said, a ghost of a smile tugging at her mouth. Little things. Bird, wind, fire. He said learning a new word meant you stayed alive another day. Isaiah felt something twist deep inside him. He didn't stop her. He didn't speak. He just listened. Because she needed to say this, and because maybe he needed to hear it. He braided his sister's hair every morning, Nora said. And once he braided mine. Just once. I remember thinking, no one's hands had ever been that gentle with me before. Rosa crossed herself. Lila hugged her doll tighter. Isaiah stared at the floor with a jaw locked so tight it ached. Nora touched her own braid, the messy one Rosa had brushed out earlier. He didn't deserve what happened, she whispered. None of them did. For a moment the room held its breath. Then Lila reached out, carefully, and placed her small hand over Nora's. Ma used to braid mine, she said. Maybe you can learn with me. Nora's breath hitched, but she nodded. I'd like that. Isaiah stepped closer, clearing his throat. Nahi sounds like a good man. He was, Nora said simply. Good in a way most folks don't bother being. Her eyes lifted to Isaiah's, and for the first time since he found her, she didn't look afraid of him. She looked like she saw something familiar in him, something broken but kind. Rosa clapped her hands lightly. Enough sad for today. Today is for living. Nora exhaled shakily. I didn't think I'd ever sit at a table again. Isaiah leaned on the counter, arms crossed loosely. Well, you're sitting at this one, and you're welcome to stay till you can stand on your own. Her eyes glistened. Why are you doing this? Isaiah swallowed. Because I couldn't save the last woman I loved. Because no one deserves to die tied to a tree. Because you looked at my girl like she mattered. He said none of those things. Because you're here, he said simply. And folks who make it this far deserve a place to rest. Nora stared at him, really stared, and something warm flickered through the room, like the fire had reached them all. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was the first step toward it. The first real ember of Am Ap in a house full of ghosts. Night settled over Willow Bend like a heavy wool blanket, warm in pockets, suffocating in others. Outside, the wind scraped the siding. Inside, the ranch was quiet except for the crackle of the fire and the occasional shift of the porch boards beneath Isaiah's pacing boots. He'd been out there nearly an hour. Nora sat at the table, fingers wrapped around a chipped cup of tea Rosa had pressed into her hand. Her back still ached, but not as violently now. The scars pulled when she breathed too deep. Her body was healing. Her mind wasn't. She could still hear herself telling them about Nahi, could still feel Isaiah's silence hanging in the air afterward. Too heavy, too knowing, too something. He came in finally, closing the door with a soft thud. The fire threw shadows across his face, making him look older, harder, like parts of him were carved from the dark itself. Nora braced. "Miss Nora," he began, voice tight, "I need to tell you something. Ain't easy. Won't land gentle." Her stomach dropped. "All right," she whispered. Isaiah took a seat across from her, elbows on knees, hands clasped like he was praying to a god who'd stopped listening years ago. "I wasn't always a rancher," he said. "Before Ayanna, my wife, before Lila, I rode with a band of scouts, men hired by the militia, folks who thought they were keeping the territory safe." Nora's breath froze. Isaiah looked up. "We led white men to Comanche camps, mapped trails, opened paths, told ourselves we were protecting settlers." Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. "I quit," he said quietly. "After the raid on Red Creek, after my wife and boy." He stopped, swallowed, tried again. "They died that night, same as dozens of Comanche, same as folks stuck between." Nora's fingers tightened around the cup. Red Creek. The name curved through her bones like ice. "The night you described," Isaiah said. "The night soldiers hit the camp where you were kept." He paused. Nora's lips parted, a thin whisper escaping. "No." Isaiah nodded slowly. "Yes. Sounds like we were there the same night." Her cup slipped from her hands, clattering against the table. Tea splashed across the wood, but she barely noticed. "No," she said again, voice breaking this time. You can't, Miss Nora." "Don't call me that," she cried, pushing back from the table so fast the chair nearly toppled. Pain tore across her back, but she didn't care. "You were with them? With the men who burned the camp? Who shot anyone who ran? Who—" Isaiah closed his eyes like her words were bullets. "I didn't fire. That night I ran home when I heard the screams. You led them there." Nora's voice cracked. "You showed them the trails. You opened the gate." The room felt too small, her chest too tight. Memories slammed into her. Nahi's voice shouting in the dark, the firelight dancing on his face, the screams, the thunder of rifles. The moment she was grabbed from behind, dragged away, forced to watch smoke rise where his body fell. She staggered toward the door. Rosa appeared, blocking her path gently but firmly. Nora, slow down. Don't touch me, Nora choked, not out of fear this time, but because her lungs felt like crushed tin. I need air. Isaiah remained seated, hunched forward, hands shaking. I ain't asking forgiveness, he said, voice hoarse. But I need you to know something. I didn't know about you. Didn't know about Nahi. Didn't know innocent folks were in that camp. I swear it. Nora turned on him, eyes blazing through tears. You didn't ask either, she whispered. None of you asked. Isaiah looked like the floor had given way beneath him. You're right. Nora stumbled out onto the porch. The cold hit her like a slap. She gripped the railing, knuckles white, head bowed as her breath came in broken bursts. He followed, slow, careful, as if approaching a wounded animal he'd already hurt enough. I didn't come out here to argue, Isaiah said softly from the doorway. Just to say the truth, plain. She didn't turn. That night wasn't justice, he said. It was men taking what wasn't theirs. I was part of it. I hate that. I hate that I can't undo it. Her tears dripped onto the porch boards. Nahi, she whispered. He saved me. He hid me. He loved me. And you. Her voice collapsed. Isaiah stepped closer, but not too close. I think about Ayana every day, he said quietly. About how she died scared holding our boy. And maybe someone on the other side looked at me and saw a monster too. Nora flinched. Are you saying we're the same? No, Isaiah answered, gentle but firm. I'm saying we were both caught in someone else's war, and neither of us walked out clean. A long, raw silence stretched between them. Nora's breath slowed, not steady, but less jagged. I don't hate you, she whispered, surprising them both. I want to. God knows I should. But I don't. Isaiah's eyes closed, like her words pained him more than if she'd screamed. I ain't asking you to stay, he said. And if you want to leave, I'll saddle a horse myself. But I need you to know, whatever happened that night, whatever blood is on my hands, I ain't letting anybody write your story for you again. Not Hayes. Not Luther. Not anybody. She stared out at the dark yard. Silent. Inside, Lila's small voice drifted through the window, humming to her doll. That soft sound, that fragile thread of normalcy, wrapped around Nora's heart in a way she didn't expect. She wiped her face. I'm tired, she whispered. Isaiah nodded. All right. Let's go inside. He didn't touch her, didn't try to help, just walked beside her, matching her steps, matching her shaking. They entered the dim, warm room again. Rosa pretended not to stare. Lila looked up quietly from her spot on the floor. Nora sank into the chair, trembling. Isaiah stood across from her, hands at his sides, eyes apologizing even when his voice didn't. The air felt heavier than before, but it wasn't hopeless. It was the weight of truth finally spoken, and the pressure of whatever must come next. By sunrise the next day, Nora looked like someone who'd been awake the entire night, even though she'd slept 3 broken hours. Her eyes were still swollen from crying. Isaiah's were rimmed red from thinking too much and saying too little. Rosa kept the stove warm and the house quieter than usual. Lila sat on the floor, tracing little circles in the dust with her finger, sensing the heaviness between the adults even though she didn't understand the shape of it. No one expected the knock. 3 sharp thuds, authoritative, cold. Isaiah stiffened. "Stay here." Nora's stomach dropped. Lila grabbed her doll. Rosa muttered a prayer. Isaiah opened the door. Sheriff Hayes stood on the porch with 2 deputies behind him. Men who wore guns like they wore arrogance, slung low and easy. Hayes tipped his hat as though they were neighbors and not a noose wrapped in a badge. "Morning, Cole," he said, eyes sliding past Isaiah into the house. "Word is you got a guest." Isaiah blocked the doorway entirely. "Words travel fast." "Especially scandal," Hayes replied. "White woman found half dead in the hills, ends up hiding at a black man's ranch. That's a tale folks don't ignore." Nora felt her blood turn to ice. Isaiah didn't move. "She ain't hiding. She's recovering." "And who made you judge of that?" Hayes challenged. "Town needs to hear her side of things, properly, under oath." Nora's hands shook. "No," she whispered under her breath. "Not again." Hayes lifted his chin. "Miss Whitfield, you in there? You come with us peaceful. We'll see you treated fair." Isaiah let out a low, humorless laugh. "Dry Creek ain't been fair to a woman in your custody in 20 years. Hayes's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Cole. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Hard's already here," Isaiah said calmly, even though his pulse thundered. "You ain't taking her anywhere." A deputy stepped forward. "We can drag her out if we gotta." Isaiah's jaw flexed. He didn't reach for his gun, but the tension in the air felt like gunpowder anyway. Then Rosa moved behind Isaiah, voice steady but sharp. "Sheriff, this woman is bleeding stitches. She won't make it through another night in your jail." Hayes tipped his hat slightly. "That's for the doc to say." "No," Rosa snapped. "That's for God to decide. And he ain't appointed you." Hayes bristled. "I'll be back tomorrow, and she better be ready to talk." Isaiah didn't blink. "She'll talk if she chooses, not if you push." Hayes gave him a long, cold look. "Black man harboring a white woman leaves room for ugly assumptions." Isaiah stepped forward. "Sheriff, you can assume whatever helps you sleep, but she's not yours to claim." The sheriff hesitated, just long enough to show fear flickered under his anger, then jerked his reins and rode off with his men only. When the sound of hooves faded, did Nora realize she'd been holding her breath so tightly her ribs hurt. Isaiah closed the door quietly. "You all right?" "No." Nora stared at the floor. "I'm not." He moved closer, but not too close. "He's bluffing. You don't owe him anything." "I owe everyone something," Nora whispered. "I owe the dead and the living." And now you and your girl. Isaiah frowned. You don't owe me a damn thing. Her voice fractured. But I'm pulling you into danger. I hear them out there talking. You're risking your ranch, your life, your daughter. She's my responsibility, Isaiah said firmly, not yours. He believed it. She didn't. Nora stood abruptly, even though her legs weren't steady, and began rummaging through the torn satchel she'd come with. Isaiah stepped back, giving her space. After a moment, she pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. She froze before unwrapping it, hands trembling. What's that? Isaiah asked quietly. My father's, she murmured. Judge Whitfield. He gave it to me before everything fell apart. She unwrapped it slowly. A leather-bound notebook, edges worn, pages yellowed and warped from sweat and travel. Her breath snagged. I haven't opened it since. Isaiah waited, not pushing, not asking. Nora sat at the table. The room went still. Even Lila stopped fidgeting. She opened the notebook. Her eyes scanned the first pages, short notes, scattered thoughts, legal references. But then she reached the section written in a hurried, shaking hand. She read silently at first, then aloud, soft but clear. The Red Creek matter weighs heavier than the badge I wear. Luther Kane came to me again today, papers in hand, demands in his voice, says the land must be cleared, no matter the blood spilled. Isaiah felt his chest tighten. Nora turned the page with trembling fingers. If I refuse, he'll have me removed. If I comply, I am complicit. God forgive me, I already am. Her hand covered her mouth. Isaiah whispered, keep reading. She did. Hayes agreed to call the raid a necessary strike. Says the people want safety more than truth. Says the story will hold. Nora's vision blurred. He knew, she whispered. My father. He knew the raid wasn't justice. Isaiah's stomach twisted. Nora, she flipped another page. I fear Luther means to force the Whitfields out as well. My daughter. If she knew the rot beneath this town, she would leave. I pray she finds the truth before it swallows her whole. Her breath broke. The notebook slipped from her hands, hitting the table with a soft thud. I can't stay here, Nora whispered, voice hollow. If Hayes finds this, if they know I have it, they'll kill you just to get to me. Isaiah moved around the table slowly. Nora, listen. No! She shook her head violently. You don't understand. This book could burn the whole town down. My father betrayed everyone. Comanche, settlers, you, me. Isaiah crouched beside her. And you think runnin' solves that? Yes, she whispered. It keeps you alive. He looked at her like she'd said the cruelest thing imaginable. Nora, I've been dead inside since Red Creek. Letting you walk into that town alone? That'd finish the job. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. I don't want more blood on my hands, she whispered. Isaiah shook his head slowly. Ain't your blood to carry this? This is the truth, and truth don't break people. Lies do. Her breath shuddered. He stood, offering no touch, just steady presence. You ain't alone in this, he said. Not anymore. Nora closed her eyes. But the truth was, she wasn't sure if that made things safer or infinitely more dangerous. The house went quiet after Isaiah's words, quiet in a way that made Nora feel like the walls themselves were holding their breath. She stared down at the leather-bound notebook lying open on the table, her father's handwriting slanting across the page like a confession whispered too late. Rosa took Lila into the kitchen, sensing this wasn't something a child should breathe near. Isaiah stepped back, giving Nora space, though he didn't take his eyes off her, as if afraid she might fold in on herself like wet paper. She almost did. The truth in those pages felt like a fist closing around her ribs. Judge Whitfield hadn't been the man she'd believed. Steady, righteous, unwavering. He'd been afraid, complicit, torn, and in the end, silent. Silence was what had killed the Comanche that night. Silence was what had dragged her life into the dirt. Her hands trembled as she flipped to the next entry. Kane says the land transfer must be signed this week. Says I said yes already. God help me, maybe I did. She shut her eyes, a sob slipping out before she could stop it. Isaiah stepped forward. Nora, don't, she whispered. Please, just don't. She pressed a hand to her mouth, breathing hard, fighting to keep the pieces of herself together. But they kept sliding apart. A soft knock sounded behind her. Not a door, not a hoof, her own mind. A memory surfaced, gentle at first, then sharper. Her father sitting by lamplight, coat off, sleeves rolled, hands shaking as he signed something she wasn't allowed to see. Her asking, "Papa, are you sick?" Him answering, "Go to bed, Nora. This is grown folks' trouble." Now she knew the truth. It wasn't sickness. It was guilt. Her chair scraped loudly as she stood. Isaiah flinched like he expected her to run. He wasn't wrong. She crossed the room in quick, uneven steps, pulling her torn satchel from the peg by the door. Isaiah moved toward her. "Nora, don't do that." "I have to." Her voice trembled. "I have to leave before Hayes comes back. If he sees this notebook, if he thinks you're hiding evidence, he'll hang you before he even reads the damn thing." Isaiah shook his head. "And if you go alone, they'll bury you in the sandpits by sundown. Hayes ain't playing fair." "He never did," Nora whispered. She shoved the notebook inside the satchel and pulled it shut. Her breath came fast, shallow. She felt dizzy, like the ground had tilted and she was sliding toward the edge. Isaiah grabbed the back of a chair instead of reaching for her, as if holding on to furniture was safer than touching something so breakable. "You leave and don't protect anyone," he said. "Not me. Not Lila. Not you." Nora turned away. "It keeps the fire from spreading." "The fire's already here," he said softly. Her shoulders shook. She moved toward the door. Isaiah's voice followed, low but steady. "You walk out with that notebook. Hayes will say you're running from guilt. Kane will say you stole it. Folks in town will say you were in on everything. Nora stopped dead. Her breath hitched. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. If you knew the rot beneath this town. Her mother's voice. You speak truth too loud. Men will take it as a challenge. And Nahi's. You are someone's sky. She gripped the doorknob hard enough her knuckles went white. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. Isaiah's boots creaked as he took one slow step closer. You're someone who lived. That's who you are. Her chin quivered. Someone who ran? She whispered. Someone who survived, he corrected gently. She shook her head. Tears blurred her vision. If I stay, everything hurts. If I go, everything hurts. I'm tired of bleeding for men who chose violence. Isaiah's voice broke slightly. Nora, you ain't bleeding alone. That cracked something inside her. Pain spilled out. Raw, unfiltered. She clutched the door frame like it was the only sturdy thing left in her world. I trusted my father, she said, voice shaking violently. I trusted the law. I trusted a whole town to protect me. And I was wrong every time. Her voice dropped to a whisper. How do I trust myself now? Isaiah didn't speak. Not at first. He just let the silence settle, heavy and honest. Then he said quietly, by staying long enough to decide what you want, not what they want. His words didn't soothe. They didn't fix anything. But they made her pause. Her hand fell away from the doorknob. She turned, tears streaking down her face. I can't breathe here. Then sit, Isaiah said gently. Don't run, sit. It sounded simple, but it wasn't. Nora walked back toward the kitchen table like a woman walking through water. She sank into the chair, burying her face in her hands. Isaiah didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, just stood near, steady as a fence post. After a long while, she lifted her head enough to whisper, if my father wanted to tell the truth, why didn't he? Isaiah swallowed. Fear's louder than conscience sometimes. That's not an excuse. No, he said softly, but it's human. Her tears slowed, becoming silent drops. Then she whispered the words she'd been afraid of since the moment she opened the notebook. If he was too weak to do the right thing, what if I am too? Isaiah answered without hesitation. You ain't him. Her breath trembled. How do you know? Because you're sitting here, he said. Fighting to decide. He never fought. He folded. She looked up, eyes red but sharpened by something rising behind them. Not fury, not hope. Resolve, fragile as a newborn heartbeat. She touched the notebook gently, like it might bruise. I need to read the rest. Isaiah nodded. All right, I'll sit right here. And he did. While Nora opened the next page, hands still shaking, heart breaking all over again, Isaiah sat beside her in silence, not saving her, not guiding her, just staying. And for the first time since she'd been dragged from the Comanche camp, Nora felt something unfamiliar inside herself. Not comfort, not safety, but the first faint shift toward choosing not to disappear. Dry Creek looked different when you rode toward it, with the truth strapped to your saddlebag. The town had always been dusty, loud, half-rotten, but today it felt like the whole place was leaning forward, waiting to bite. Nora rode beside Isaiah, her back straight, though every step of the horse jolted her healing wounds. She'd braided her hair herself that morning, shaky, uneven, but hers. Rosa had tightened the bandages. Lila had hugged her thighs and whispered, "Be brave, Miss Nora. Pa always says brave ain't the same as not scared." Nora repeated those words in her mind now, over and over. Isaiah kept a half-length ahead, not protective, just present, solid, a quiet wall she could lean against without asking. When they reached the ridge overlooking Dry Creek, Nora swallowed hard. "Still want to do this?" Isaiah asked. No judgment, no pressure, just the question that mattered. Nora's fingers tightened around the reins. "I have to," she whispered. "If I run, I'll never stop running, and I'm tired." Isaiah nodded. "Then we ride in together." They nudged their horses forward. People noticed them before they even hit the main street. Heads turned. Whispers sparked like flint on stone. "Is that her? That Whitfield girl? She's riding in with him? Lord Almighty, look at the nerve." Nora's heartbeat thundered, but she forced herself not to hunch, not to shrink. Every step felt like walking barefoot across broken glass, but she didn't stop. At the edge of town, a group of ranch hands spat in the dirt as they passed. "Look at that," one muttered. "Black buck trotting around with white trouble on his saddle." Isaiah's jaw flexed. Nora saw it, saw his pride ripple with pain, but he kept his gaze leveled forward. She whispered, barely moving her lips, "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he replied quietly. "Their poison ain't yours to carry." But she could feel the weight of it. Every slur thrown at him felt like a stone dropped into her chest. They dismounted in front of the church steps, Dry Creek's makeshift courthouse. Sheriff Hayes was waiting on the porch, thumbs hooked in his belt, pretending he hadn't been watching for them the whole morning. "Well, look at this," Hayes drawled. "The wandering lady returned and brought her escort." Isaiah stepped forward before she could speak. "She came by choice." Hayes smirked. "Sure she did." Nora forced her chin up. "I'm here to give my statement." "That so?" Hayes asked. "We figured you might be running scared." Isaiah's voice dropped low. "She ain't running. She's telling the truth." Hayes's eyes narrowed just a hair, not enough for the deputies behind him to notice, but enough for Isaiah to catch. "Well," Hayes said, "the town'll hear whatever tale you got. But be warned, lies travel faster than horses. And if you're fixin' to smear good men's names," Isaiah stepped between Nora and the sheriff. "Say what you mean, Hayes." "I mean," Hayes said coolly, "be careful who you stand beside, Cole. Folks might assume you're guilty of whatever she confesses." Nora's stomach lurched. Every word from Hayes carried a shadow of threat. Isaiah didn't blink. I stood beside her the day she was dying on a tree. I'm standing beside her now. That ain't changin'. A murmur rose through the growing crowd. Nora swallowed. Hard. I want to speak to the town, she said loudly, surprising even herself. All of them, not just you. Hayes raised a brow. Bold. You got something worth hearing? Nora nodded toward the church steps. Let them decide. For a moment, Hayes considered refusing, but then Luther Kane stepped into view from behind the doorway. His coat clean, boots polished, eyes meaner than a trapped coyote. Let the girl babble, Luther sneered. It'll be fun to hear how she explains her time with savages. Nora flinched, but only once. Isaiah murmured, Ignore him. She did, or at least she tried to. Within minutes, a loose circle formed, townsfolk crowding close, hungry for gossip, drama, a spectacle. Nora could feel their eyes on her skin like hot coals. Isaiah stood just behind her right shoulder, not blocking, just anchoring. Nora stepped onto the lowest church stair. She nearly stumbled, but Isaiah's presence steadied her without a touch. I didn't come here to defend myself, Nora began. Not from the words you've all whispered. Not from the lies told about me. The crowd leaned in. Her hands shook, but she kept talking. I came because the truth about Red Creek didn't die in the fire. It lived here, in this town, in its leaders. Gasps, a few scoffs. Hayes folded his arms. Luther stiffened. Nora pulled her father's notebook from her satchel. Her voice wavered. This belonged to Judge Whitfield. A hush fell. Inside it, she continued, are his notes on the deals he made, the threats he received, the raid he helped justify, the blood he helped excuse. Hayes barked. That's hearsay. Nora shook her head. It's his handwriting, his confession, his shame. She opened to a page and read aloud. Luther Kane demands the land, says the Comanche must be removed by force, says the story will hold if Hayes repeats it with conviction. The crowd erupted with shouts. Hayes flushed a dangerous red. That's enough. No, Nora said sharply. It's not. Isaiah stepped closer, calm but firm. Let her speak. She lifted the notebook higher. My father believed he could bury the truth, but I won't. Her voice steadied. I loved a Comanche boy. You carved that on my back like a crime. But you know what the real crime was? The crowd stilled. Men who used fear to steal land. Men who lied to an entire town. Men who hid behind badges and boots, dozens of faces shifted. Confusion, guilt, fury, shock. For the first time since arriving, Nora felt something other than fear. She felt fire. I'm done being quiet, she said. You want my statement? Here it is. I won't run from the truth or from any of you. Isaiah stepped beside her fully now, shoulder to shoulder. Hayes glared. Luther spat in the dirt. But the crowd listened. And for the first time, Nora wasn't standing alone in front of them. She was standing against them, with someone at her side who refused to walk away. The crowd swelled in front of the church like a storm cloud, voices rising, boots shifting, arguments igniting from every corner. Nora felt the heat of 100 eyes on her, each pair holding a different kind of judgment. Hayes stepped forward again, trying to regain control. "Town of Dry Creek," he called out. "You're hearing the fever talk of a woman who's been through hell and back. She ain't in her right mind." Nora held up the notebook. "My father wrote this long before I was taken, long before Red Creek burned." Her hands were shaking, but her voice wasn't. Luther Kane spat on the step beneath her feet. "Judge Whitfield was a coward. Everyone knows that. Why would any of you believe the ramblings of a dying man?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Not agreement, not quite, but something uneasy. Doubt. Isaiah moved up one step, a quiet shield at her back. "If Judge Whitfield was a coward," he said, "what does that make the man who threatened him?" Luther froze. The crowd gasped, turning toward him like a pack scenting blood. Hayes snapped, "Cole, you're stepping way out of line. Only reason I'm talking," Isaiah cut in, "is 'cause this town deserves to know who's been leading them by the nose." Nora opened the notebook, flipping to the page she'd read to Isaiah the night before, the one she'd been too scared to accept, too terrified to believe. "Here," she said, voice tight. "Listen." She read her father's words. "L. Kane insists the Comanche presence must be erased to secure the land. Says fear will move the townsfolk faster than truth. Hayes will keep the story straight. Says if a white girl dies, the raid can be justified entirely. If I refuse to sign, he says he'll bury my family with the Indians." The silence cracked like a rifle shot. Then, "What the hell? He wrote that? My God. Is that Hayes's name on the page?" Nora swallowed. "Yes." A deputy's hand drifted from his holster in shock. Hayes barked at him, "Holster that damn fool!" But the damage was done. Suspicion was a wildfire. Once lit, it didn't ask permission. Hayes sneered. "A book ain't proof. Anyone could have written that." Nora's shoulders straightened. "Proof?" she echoed. "You want proof?" She turned to Isaiah. This was the second twist, the harder one, the one that cut both ways. Isaiah stepped forward. His hands were steady even when his voice wasn't. "I was there," he said, "at Red Creek. I led the first scouting party. I saw the branding iron on the fence posts before the raid." Gasps, shouts, accusations. Isaiah kept talking through them. That iron wasn't Comanche. It wasn't from any fort. It was from Star W. Luther's ranch. I saw it. I thought maybe it was taken as a trophy, maybe stolen. I was wrong. He looked right at Luther Kane. That land was marked as yours before the Comanche raid. Detonated right then. Dry Creek's war for safety was a staged land grab, orchestrated by its wealthiest rancher. Luther's face turned the color of dead ash. "You lying bastard!" Isaiah held firm. "You paid the scouts. You fed us false maps. You wanted Red Creek cleared so you could take the valley." Isaiah's voice cracked at the end, not from guilt, but from the weight of finally saying it. Nora could see the pain behind his words, how long he'd carried this, how much shame was tied to it. The crowd's mood swung sharply, not toward violence but toward rage at being used. Old Sam O'Reilly, whose son died in the raid, pointed a shaking finger at Luther. "You told us they attacked first." Luther's lip curled. "And you believed it, 'cause you wanted someone to blame." A collective gasp. Hayes moved toward Luther. "Shut your damn mouth." "No!" Luther roared, eyes wild. "I won't. This town is built on fear, and fear is easy." He reached inside his coat. Isaiah reacted first. He grabbed Nora's arm and pulled her behind him, just as Luther yanked out a pistol. Screams shot through the crowd. Hayes drew his gun. "Kane, drop it!" Luther didn't drop it. He fired toward Isaiah, but Isaiah had already shoved Nora to the ground. Taking the blow meant for her. Blood blossomed on his arm. The crowd erupted, running, shouting, ducking for cover. Hayes tackled Luther, slamming him against the church wall. The pistol clattered away. 2 deputies pinned him. He fought like a feral thing, screaming about land and destiny and keeping the West pure. It took 4 men to drag him down the steps. Hayes stood, breath ragged, face pale. "Isaiah," Nora gasped, crawling to him. Are you hit?" "It grazed me," he grunted. "I'm fine. You okay?" She nodded, shaking violently. Hayes looked at the crowd, then at Nora, then at Isaiah. "This town's been fed lies for years," he said hoarsely, "and I ain't proud to admit I helped spread 'em." He turned to the deputies holding Luther. "Lock him up." The crowd murmured, soft at first, then louder, rippling with something new. Not anger, not fear. Truth. Raw, painful, unstoppable truth. Nora held Isaiah's injured arm with trembling fingers. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. "Why take the bullet for me?" Isaiah met her eyes, steady, bruised, honest. "'Cause folks been taking your life from you since the day you were born," he said softly. "And I aim to give some of it back." Her breath stopped, broke. He wasn't just protecting her. He was choosing her. And in front of the whole damn town. Dry Creek didn't know it yet, but something had cracked open that morning. Something big enough to bury the lies that built it. Nora and Isaiah stood at the center of the broken circle, blood on his sleeve, her fingers on his arm, truth heavy at their feet. They weren't safe. They weren't done. But they were no longer alone. And for the first time, the town didn't know whether to fear them or finally listen. Luther Kane was hauled toward the jailhouse kicking and spitting, but the real storm stayed right there on the church steps, where Nora held Isaiah's bleeding arm, and the whole town tried to decide what to believe now that their lies had cracked open. "Sit," she ordered. Isaiah frowned. "Ain't sitting in front of these folks like I'm weak." "You stood in front of a bullet for me," she snapped. "Sit." He huffed a laugh and obeyed, lowering himself to the step as Rosa pushed through the lingering crowd with cloth and a flask. "Hold still," she barked, cleaning the wound. Isaiah muttered under his breath, but didn't pull away when Nora held his hand. Across the square, people argued, some furious, some shaken, some suddenly unsure about the town they'd trusted all their lives. A few approached cautiously, studying Nora like she was someone they didn't know how to hate anymore. Others turned away entirely, preferring the comfort of old lies. Hayes walked toward them, pale and shaken. "Cole," he said, voice scraped raw, "I owe you something." Isaiah just watched him, unreadable. Hayes swallowed hard. "You were right. Kane twisted all of us around. Red Creek, the stories. I carried them because it was easier." Isaiah didn't soften. "Truth ain't supposed to be easy." Hayes nodded, shame settling on his shoulders. "I'll write everything. Send it to the circuit court. Kane, the land theft, the threats, all of it." Nora felt a strange, aching relief. Not victory, just honesty, finally breathing on open ground. Old Mrs. O'Reilly stepped forward. Her son had died in the raid, and grief carved every line of her face. "Girl," she asked gently, "that Comanche boy you loved, was he good to you?" Nora's throat tightened. "Yes, he was kind." The old woman nodded slowly. "Then maybe we all judged wrong." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. When the crowd thinned and the dust settled, Isaiah rose carefully. Nora steadied him, her hand sliding into his like it belonged there. "You need rest," she murmured. He gave a faint smile. "You sayin' I look beat?" "I'm sayin' you look like a man who told the truth and bled for it." He laughed softly, then pulled the twisted branding iron from his saddlebag. "Star W, the mark of everything stolen." "This started it," he said. Nora stared at it, feeling the weight of all that pain. "What will you do with it?" "Melt it down," Isaiah replied. "Make something new, something that ain't born from hate." The words hit deeper than she expected. He wasn't just talking about iron. He was talking about himself, about her, about what they could become. Isaiah mounted his horse, wincing at his shoulder, and held out his hand. "You comin'?" Nora gathered her reins, heart steady for the first time in years. "Yes," she said. "Home's that way." Isaiah paused on the word home, letting it settle like something he'd never dared claim. Together, they rode back toward Willow Bend, toward the first fragile shape of a life built not from fear, but from truth, and the slow, stubborn work of healing. The forge behind Willow Bend Ranch hadn't seen fire since the year Ayanna died. Isaiah had avoided it like a man avoiding judgment. But that evening, dust still clinging from Dry Creek, and the last light sinking through cottonwoods. He stood before the cold hearth and struck a match. The flame caught like it had been waiting. Nora stood beside him, arms folded tight, her gaze fixed on the rust-flecked Star W branding iron on the table. She couldn't look at it without hearing screams, seeing fire, remembering how her father's handwriting once turned a symbol into a sentence. Isaiah watched her, seeing the storm she tried to keep quiet. "You sure?" she whispered. "No," he answered, "but it's time." He slid the iron into the fire. Even cold, it had felt violent, heavy with the choices of men who had torn through both their families. Heat spread through the forge, and Nora felt her breath tremble as if the flames were burning away something inside her too. Rosa appeared in the doorway, with Lila clutching her skirt. "We watch?" the girl asked. Isaiah nodded, and Lila stepped closer. She had seen the brand once before, dug from his saddlebag the night everything fell apart. She'd cried then, afraid the world would take her father, just as it took her mother. Now she stood straighter, braver. "What are you making?" she asked. Isaiah glanced at Nora. "Something new," Nora said softly. "Something that won't hurt anyone." Heat softened the metal until it sagged. Isaiah lifted it with tongs, set it on the anvil, and paused, looking at Nora as though asking permission to break the past. "This iron ruined whole families," he said. "Mine, yours, folks all over. I carried pieces of that raid inside me for years, thinking I deserved to. You didn't. Maybe not, but I believed it." He drew a breath. "I don't want this thing deciding who I am anymore, or who you are." He brought the hammer down. The strike rang across the ranch, sharp, final, like a bone breaking clean. Lila flinched. Nora didn't. She felt it crack something stuck in her ribs. Again and again the hammer fell until the iron lost every trace of what it had once been. No more star. No more W. No more hatred shaped into steel. Then gently, almost tenderly, Isaiah reheated and reshaped it. When he lifted the cooled metal, it was a simple ring,